For a moment he considered refusing to go on the journey with Evan the elder. Chapter 12. That looks a bit dodgy. Woody had realised that if he decided to turn down the offer of a journey on some highway or other, that he may be surrendering the opportunity to spend time with an older time separation of himself. His mind then shifted once more, and he wondered about Evan's role in all of this. What about him? Me? The older me? What's he going to be doing? Surely he doesn't need assistance from that, whoever he is. By now, Fate had made his way across the river and over to the big tree, and began answering the boy's questions, even though he had merely thought the questions rather than asked them out loud. Evan doesn't actually have to do anything else now. His main job was to explain to you the reason for my visit, introduce us to one another, and convince you that it's safe for you to venture along a wondrous journey with me. Fate then increased his psychological edge over the boy with this one contrived question. You do like going on adventures, don't you? Of course I do, thought Woody, but he kept quiet, so as to hide his disappointment. He had assumed that his older time separation would be part of the expedition. His eyes had lost that early glint which they had acquired when he thought that they were going on a journey with the one person he had met who knew him, understood him, and accepted him for the way in which he thought. For a moment he considered refusing to go on the journey without Evan, the elder, but having the foresight to realise that they would know he was bluffing, he decided upon a different approach. Woody moved up close to Evan and placed his hand inside the larger hand, which was to become his own. As Fate continued talking, Woody pretended he was not listening and feigned interest in the fluttering of a passing butterfly. He did, however, find himself wondering if perhaps butterflies produce butter in the same way that silkworms produce silk and honeybees produce honey. He was of the mind to ask Evan the origin of the butterfly's name, but could see that he and the other one, for he had not been formally introduced as yet, were still talking. So instead he pushed his hand a little deeper into the man's, as if to remind him that I'm still here. Finally, Fate told Evan, it's up to you whether you come along with us. Ultimately, it is your choice. But it will make things easier and possibly safer in the respect that you could keep an eye on him when I am taking care of business. Evan squeezed the hand that had been placed inside his and said, he says it's your choice, conveying to the boy the equality which he felt they shared. Woody couldn't help but feel as though he had manipulated Evan by squeezing his hand, and wondered if this was the emotional blackmail that his mother had accused him of using on occasions. He did not feel guilty for using his own brand of persuasion, but rather he had the feeling of satisfaction and victory which finally induced him to speak to Fate. We have decided that we would both like to go with you, he said most authoritatively. Now, maybe if Woody had stopped for a moment to gather his thoughts, he may very well have come to the conclusion that all of the propositions that were being put to him were too outlandish for an 11-year-old boy, and having reached that conclusion, decided instead to go on a much more straightforward adventure with the people he knew, namely the two brothers. He had to admit, though, that the alternative did sound weird and wonderful, and not too outlandish for the grown-up man which he was to become. So, having gathered his thoughts along with his canvas bag, they set off together on their journey along the highways of life, leaving the fishing rod in the safety of some long grass. Scooby and his brother arrived for their rendezvous with Woody just in time to see him wandering off with two strange men. "That looks a bit dodgy," wheezed Scooby, who could feel his asthma coming on in the hot, close air. "Shall we go after them and bring them back?" his brother Jimmy asked. "You can, but I'm going to have to rest a while," Scooby informed his brother as he sat down with his back against a tree after taking 2 puffs from his inhaler. "Ah, leaving," replied Jimmy. "If he's stupid enough to go off with 2 blokes, then that's his fault. Anyway, for once, if he gets into trouble, nobody can blame us."